The Hall of Judgment was silent. Only the sound of heavy boots echoed against the metallic floor. Hundreds of alien eyes watched as the widow was brought forward, her wrists bound by glowing chains. Her pale skin shimmered under the cold blue lights, and her silver eyes showed both fear and defiance. The alien council sat high on their thrones. Each one wore a symbol of power, golden bands that represented law and order in the Galactic Union. The leader, an old alien with a sharp voice, spoke slowly. "Vera of Luthen Prime, you have been found guilty of defying the Council's command." Vera's voice was weak but steady. "I only told the truth," she said. "The humans did not destroy the colonies. You did." Gasps spread through the crowd. Even the guards stepped back. No one dared to say that name, humans. The leader slammed his staff on the floor. "Enough, the humans are extinct. They were monsters, bringers of war and death. You defend ghosts," Vera lifted her chin. "Then punish me for remembering what you fear." The hall went silent again. The leader looked down at her, his eyes narrow. "Very well, your punishment shall fit your crime." He leaned forward and spoke the words that made every being in the hall tremble. "You will be given to a human." A shock ran through the crowd. Some laughed nervously. Others whispered in disbelief. A human? Impossible. The species had vanished generations ago. None had been seen in over 100 years. But then the doors opened. 2 armored guards entered, leading a tall figure in a black coat. His face was partly hidden by a visor, and his skin looked different. Rough, tanned, and marked by old scars. His eyes glowed faintly blue like twin stars in a storm. A ripple of fear swept through the aliens. They could feel something about him, something powerful, something old. "This is Captain Kane," said the judge. "He has agreed to take you under his command." As his property, the human said nothing. He only looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded once and turned toward the exit. The guards pushed Vera forward. Her chains clinked softly as she stumbled behind him. Outside, the alien city was dark and silent. The air was filled with metallic dust, and the sky glowed with 3 moons. Kane led her to a landing pad where his ship waited, a black vessel with a silver insignia that none of the aliens recognized. When the doors closed behind them, the noise of the city vanished. Only the soft hum of the engines remained. Inside, the ship was clean but empty. Cold metal walls, no crew. No sound except the soft clicks of machines. Kane removed his visor and finally spoke. His voice was low and rough. "You will stay out of restricted areas. You will not touch anything. You eat what I give you. Understand?" Vera nodded slowly. "Why did you accept me?" she asked. He looked at her, his blue eyes sharp as blades. "Because they told me not to." Then he turned away and walked to the control room. Vera stood alone in the silence, her heart racing. She looked around. There were old photos stuck to one wall, images of a woman and a small child. A name was written below in faded ink, Elena. When the engines roared and the ship lifted off, Vera looked through the window. The alien planet grew smaller and smaller until it was just a dot in the endless dark. She didn't know if she would ever see her home again. For hours, the ship moved through space. Kane said nothing. He worked in silence, checking monitors and reading data. Vera watched him secretly. He moved with calm power, like a man who had fought too many battles and survived them all. Late in the night, when she thought he was asleep, she heard him whisper softly to the photo on the wall. "I kept my promise, Elena, I'm still here." Something in his voice made her chest tighten. She didn't know this human. She didn't know why her people feared his kind so much. But something told her that the truth was not what she had been taught. And when the ship entered hyperspace, the stars stretched into lines of light. The air grew colder, the hum deeper. Suddenly, a sharp alarm rang through the ship. Kane rushed to the console, his face tense. "What is it?" Vera asked, holding onto the wall. He didn't answer. The screens flashed red. Words scrolled across the display in human language. Strange symbols she couldn't read. Kane's jaw tightened. "Hold on," he said. The ship shook violently. Outside in the darkness, something massive moved, shadows of ships too large to be natural. Vera's breath caught. "Who are they?" Kane's cold blue eyes met hers. "They're the reason humans disappeared," he said quietly. And before she could speak, the ship was swallowed by the dark. The ship drifted through the endless dark, silent except for the hum of engines. Vera sat in the small metal room she had been given. It wasn't a cell. but it felt like one, cold, empty, and far from home. She touched the faint marks left by the glowing chains that had bound her during judgment. Now they were gone, yet she still felt trapped. Captain Kane moved through the ship like a shadow. His steps were heavy, his eyes sharp, and his words were few. Every movement he made felt precise, almost mechanical. He didn't look like the monsters she'd heard about in the Council's stories. He looked tired, scarred by time and battle. When Vera tried to speak to him, he barely responded. "Eat," he said one night, placing a tray in front of her. The food was simple but warm. "You'll need your strength." "For what?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. He just walked away. Days passed. She began to explore what little space he allowed her. There were strange things on his ship. Old human flags, broken weapons, and shelves filled with books written in a language she couldn't read. One wall had a photo of a woman and child, the same she'd seen earlier. The human's fingers brushed over it often, his eyes filled with quiet pain. One evening, while he was checking the controls, Vera asked again, "Who were they?" He looked at her for a long moment. "My wife and daughter," he said simply. "They died when your people bombed the Tryon station." Her throat tightened. She had been told that humans attacked first, that aliens had only defended themselves. But the sorrow in his voice didn't sound like a monster's. After that night, she noticed things she hadn't before. Kane's hands trembled when he thought no one was looking. He sometimes stared out the window for hours, whispering to himself. He wasn't cruel, just broken. Then came the noise. It started as a faint signal, a low hum that shook the walls. Vera ran to the control room. Kane was already there, his eyes locked on the radar. Red dots surrounded their ship, pirates. Alien scavengers that hunted anything valuable. "Stay back," he said sharply. The ship jolted as enemy fire hit the hull. Lights flickered. Vera clutched the wall, watching as Kane moved with sudden precision. His sadness vanished. His voice turned calm, commanding. "Activating defense grid. Target vector 398. Metal panels opened, revealing hidden weapons. The ship fired back. Beams of blue light tore through the darkness, cutting the pirate ships apart. But there were too many. "Shields down to 40%, Vera cried. Kane didn't blink. "Then we make them regret the other 60. He pressed a sequence of commands. The ship's main cannon glowed bright white, then fired a blast so powerful that the nearest enemy vessel exploded in silence, its debris scattered like dust. The pirates fled. Within minutes, the space around them went quiet again. Vera stood frozen, staring at the human. His breathing was steady, his eyes glowing faintly blue again. "You fight like a war machine," she whispered. He didn't look at her. "I was one." Afterward, she helped him repair the ship. His arm was bleeding from a cut, but he didn't seem to care. She tore a strip from her sleeve and pressed it against the wound. For a moment, their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them. Pain, loss, and understanding. When the repairs were done, Vera finally asked, "Why didn't you let them kill me?" "I was sent to you as punishment." He stared out at the stars. "Because I know what it's like to be punished for someone else's sins." That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat in her room thinking about everything she'd seen. The photo, the battle, the sadness in his eyes. The stories her people told about humans being heartless didn't match the man she'd met. The next morning, she walked into the control room again. Kane was checking maps filled with coded symbols. "You're heading somewhere," she said. "But not back to the Union." He glanced at her, silent. "Where are we going?" She pressed. Finally, he spoke. "Home." "But Earth is gone," she whispered. A faint smile touched his lips. "That's what they want you to believe." Vera froze. The tone in his voice wasn't hope, it was certainty. Outside, stars stretched endlessly, but somewhere among them, there was something waiting. Something the galaxy had forgotten. And as the ship glided forward into the dark, Vera felt a chill deep inside her. She had been sentenced to a human as punishment, but she was beginning to understand. This punishment was not for her alone, it was for him too. And whatever secret he carried, it was about to shake the galaxy. The next few days passed in uneasy quiet. The ship drifted through a cold region of space where no signals, no trade routes, no life existed. Vera could feel the weight of silence pressing on her chest. Captain Kane rarely spoke, but when he did, his voice carried power, calm, deep, and filled with something heavy that she couldn't name. Vera tried to understand him. He was unlike anyone she had ever met. Part man, part mystery. Every day he repaired systems, checked logs, and studied data that she couldn't read. Yet she noticed something strange. The ship's computer was locked with codes written in ancient human script. Not the common galactic tongue. Something old, something lost. One night, when the ship's lights dimmed and Kane finally rested, Vera walked quietly to the main control deck. The screens glowed with faint blue symbols. Her hands hesitated above the console, her curiosity fighting with fear. She tapped one of the side keys and the screen flashed. Access denied. But before the lock reactivated, she caught a glimpse of one name written across the top. Project Rebirth. Her heart raced. The word rebirth echoed in her mind. Rebirth of what? Of humanity? Of something worse? She turned suddenly when she heard footsteps behind her. Kane stood in the doorway, his face in shadow. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned like cold fire. You shouldn't be here. Vera stepped back. I just wanted to understand. Understanding, he said quietly, is what got your people into this mess. He walked closer, not in anger, but with the heavy weight of truth. You think I'm your punishment, but the truth is you're mine. Vera frowned. What does that mean? He didn't answer right away. He walked to the main screen, entered a series of commands, and the locked file appeared again. The screen showed images of battlefields, burning cities, shattered ships, and planets turned to ash. This, he said, is what they erased from your history. She watched in horror as recordings played, humans fighting not to conquer but to survive. Alien fleets surrounding Earth, orbital bombardments raining fire. Kane's voice turned dark. We begged for peace. Your leaders wanted control. So they called it the cleansing. They wiped out entire human colonies thinking they could destroy us. They failed, Vera's voice shook. Then, the stories were lies. Lies, he repeated, his tone bitter. They feared us because they could never break us. And when they thought they'd won, we vanished. Not extinct, just waiting. He turned the screen off. The room fell silent again, but his words stayed in her ears. Waiting. For what? For revenge? Before she could ask, the ship's warning sirens blared. The lights flickered red and Kane's hands moved fast across the controls. They found us, he muttered. Vera ran to the window. Dark shapes emerged from the void. Massive alien cruisers. Not pirates this time. Soldiers. Her people. Kane's expression turned to stone. Of course. They sent you as bait. Vera's voice cracked. No! I didn't know. I believe you, he said quickly, surprising her. But they won't. The ships outside fired first. Energy beams struck the shields. Kane's ship shuddered. Sparks flew from the ceiling. He turned to her. You know how to handle energy controls? Yes, she said, rushing to the panel. Good, then you're with me now. He activated manual defenses. The small ship spun sharply, dodging blasts. Vera adjusted power flow, sending energy to shields. The cockpit filled with red light, alarms screaming. Kane's hands moved with deadly precision. He flew the ship straight into the formation of enemy vessels. They won't expect this, he said through clenched teeth. What are you doing? She shouted, finishing what they started. The ship's hull glowed white as it pushed the reactor to overload. For a terrifying moment, Vera thought he was going to destroy them both. But then the ship vanished, jumping faster than any warp drive she'd ever seen. When the stars reappeared, they were no longer in known space. The scanner showed wreckage floating around them, hundreds of ships, silent and broken, drifting in the dark. Vera gasped. Where are we? Kane's face softened with memory. Home, he whispered. She looked closer through the viewport. The ships were all human, old designs, some even centuries old. They floated like ghosts, but faint blue lights pulsed in their hulls. Still alive, still waiting. This, she breathed, is the lost fleet. Kane nodded slowly. They thought they destroyed us. But humanity doesn't die. It rebuilds. The silence that followed was heavy with awe. The fleet began to awaken, lights flickering, systems reactivating. Dozens of voices came through the radio, distorted but full of life. Command signal detected. Identification confirmed. Admiral Kane. Vera turned to him wide-eyed. Admiral? He looked at her almost sadly. You wanted to know who I am. Now you do. As the ancient ships turned toward them one by one, their engines roaring to life after centuries of sleep, Vera finally understood. The galaxy hadn't seen the last of humans. They had only been waiting for their leader to come home. And now, he had. The silence outside the ship was unreal. It wasn't the quiet of death, it was the quiet before awakening. Hundreds of human ships floated like metal skeletons in the dark. Their hulls were scarred and ancient, but faint blue lights began to glow along their sides one by one, like sleeping giants opening their eyes. Vera stood beside Admiral Kane, staring through the viewport. Her hands trembled slightly. She had heard stories of the lost fleet when she was a child. Every alien child had. They were told those ships were destroyed in humanity's final battle, that not a single human survived. And yet here they were, alive, waiting. Kane's voice was calm but carried the weight of command. Fleet Command, this is Admiral Kane of the Terran Vanguard, identify. For a few seconds only static answered. Then a broken voice came through, crackling with age. Admiral, signal confirmed, you are alive. Kane's expression didn't change, but Vera saw something in his eyes, something she hadn't seen before. Hope. He pressed another button. Status report. One by one, different voices responded from the fleet. Battleship Athena, power restored. Cruiser Nemesis, crew in stasis, systems awakening. Carrier Solstice, ready for orders. Vera's breath caught in her throat. They've been here all this time. Waiting for you? Kane nodded slowly. They were ordered to stand by until I returned. Humanity's last order before the fall was to survive, not to win. As the fleet slowly formed around his ship, the vast scale of human engineering unfolded before her. Some ships were miles long, their surfaces covered in human flags faded by time. Others were smaller, agile, built for speed. Together they looked like an army of ghosts ready to rise again. Vera's voice was soft. Why hide? You could have ended the war. Kane looked out at the fleet. Because victory means nothing if you lose your soul. He turned to her. The Council wanted to control every species. We refused. We believed in freedom. So they erased us from history. The ships began to sync their systems. Streams of light connected them like veins glowing in the dark. The fleet's old AI systems came online, linking to Kane's ship automatically. Holograms of old human officers appeared, digital shadows of the past. One of them, a woman in an admiral's uniform, spoke first. We lost contact 212 years ago, sir. We presumed humanity extinct. Kane gave a small nod. Not extinct. Just exiled, the hologram flickered. Do we resume Operation Rebirth? Vera turned sharply. That name again? Project Rebirth. Kane paused, his jaw tightening. No, not yet. Vera couldn't stop herself. What is Project Rebirth? He looked at her and for a moment she saw deep pain behind his calm mask. It was our final plan. If humanity ever faced extinction, the fleet would seed new human life across uninhabited worlds. Not to fight, not to conquer, but to begin again. Vera's heart ached. So the Council called that a crime. They called it rebellion, Kane replied. They were afraid of what we might become again. The fleet was now fully alive. Thousands of lights twinkled against the black void. Vera had never seen anything so beautiful yet so terrifying. Then a warning flashed across the ship's console. Incoming transmissions, multiple alien signatures. The Council's fleet had tracked them. Kane's voice deepened. So they finally came to bury us for good. The holographic officers waited for his order. Sir, your command. Vera's pulse raced. You can't fight them all, she said. They'll destroy you. Kane gave her a half smile. They've been trying for 2 centuries. He opened the comms channel and spoke to the enemy ships. His voice was firm and cold. This is Admiral Kane of the Terran Vanguard. You have entered restricted space. Leave now, or be remembered in history as the fools who woke the storm. The aliens didn't reply. Dozens of red dots filled the radar. Energy blasts lit the void. The human fleet moved as one. The old ships came alive like beasts tasting battle again. Their cannons glowed, their shields flared, and the silence was shattered by thunder. Vera stood behind Kane, watching in awe. The humans fought not with rage, but with precision. Every shot counted. Every movement was like a dance, deadly, disciplined, beautiful. The alien fleet began to break apart. Their ships, though newer, couldn't match the coordination of the humans. The Athena fired a pulse that disabled 5 enemy cruisers in one strike. The Solstice launched drones that swarmed the enemy like a metallic storm. Kane's ship took several hits, but his voice remained calm. Hold formation. Don't chase. Let them retreat. Within minutes, the battle was over. The alien ships fled into the dark, leaving behind twisted wrecks and silence. Vera exhaled slowly. You could have destroyed them all. Kane looked at her, his blue eyes glowing faintly. I could have, he said softly. But humanity is not about destruction anymore. It's about what we choose not to do. She stared at him, her fear slowly turning to something else. Respect, admiration, maybe even faith. As the fleet regrouped, the stars seemed brighter, as if they themselves had witnessed history awakening. Vera whispered to herself, "The galaxy will never be the same again." Kane didn't reply. He only looked out at his fleet, the last memory of Earth, and murmured, "No, it won't." And in that silent moment, surrounded by the ghosts of humanity's past, the future began to stir. The battle was over, but the silence that followed felt heavier than the war itself. The great human fleet floated in the dark like a city of ghosts reborn. Faint light from distant stars reflected off their hulls, casting long silver lines across the bridge. Kane stood at the center, watching the screens with an expression that was half calm, half sorrow. Vera stood beside him, still shaken. The images of the battle wouldn't leave her mind, the humans' precision, their power, their unity. Every alien child was told that humans were savage beasts who destroyed everything they touched. But she had seen the truth. They were not monsters. They were survivors, Kane, she said softly. You spared them. You could have ended it all, but you didn't. He didn't turn to look at her. His voice was quiet. If I kill them, I prove them right. She didn't fully understand, but she could feel the weight behind his words. The galaxy feared humans because of what they were capable of, and Kane carried that burden like a man carrying the ghosts of an entire world. He walked toward a sealed compartment at the back of the bridge. When the door opened, a faint light glowed within. Vera followed him carefully. Inside, she saw something unexpected, a single pod. It was transparent, filled with soft blue mist, and inside it lay a woman. Pale, peaceful, unmoving. Elena, Kane whispered. Vera froze. The same name from the photo. She's alive? Not alive, he said quietly. Not dead either. She was caught in the last blast of the war. I kept her in stasis, hoping one day I'd find a cure. Vera's chest tightened. You fought a war. Just to save her? He shook his head slowly. No. I fought because she believed humanity still had something worth saving. For the first time, Vera saw something in him break. The cold armor, the soldier's mask. Beneath it was a man who had lost everything and still refused to give up. The ship's intercom beeped. Admiral, incoming transmission, encrypted code, alien origin. Kane's jaw tensed. Patch it through. The hologram flickered to life, revealing the stern faces of the alien council. The same leaders who had sentenced Vera to him. Kane of Earth, the lead counselor said, his tone icy. You have violated galactic law. You have revived a forbidden fleet. Kane's expression didn't change. Law, he said calmly. You erased an entire species. Don't speak to me of law. The alien's eyes narrowed. You will stand down. Hand over the fleet, or every system under your command will be destroyed. Before Kane could reply, Vera stepped forward. Enough, she shouted. You lied to us. You called them monsters, but you were the ones who destroyed their worlds. The aliens stared at her, shocked. One of them sneered. Vera of Luthen Prime, you dare defend your captor? She lifted her chin. He's not my captor. He's the only one who showed mercy. The counselor's voice hardened. Then you are a traitor to your kind. The hologram vanished. Kane exhaled slowly. They'll come again, he said. Bigger fleet. More firepower. Then fight them, Vera said fiercely. He looked at her. No, if I fight again, the war will never end. I'll protect my people, but I won't burn another world. Vera's heart pounded. You can't do nothing. They'll hunt you forever. Kane looked down, thinking. Then we make them afraid of what happens if they try. He opened a case from under the control table. Inside was a small silver ring, the same one he wore in the photo. He held it out to her. Elena's ring, he said softly. She believed that even enemies could learn peace. If you wear this, you carry her faith. Vera hesitated, then took it. The metal was cold, but it felt alive in her palm. Why give it to me? Because you've already done what she couldn't, Kane said. You saw the truth. Before she could answer, the alarm blared again. Enemy signatures appeared on the radar, an entire council armada. The space around them shimmered with light from hundreds of alien ships. Vera's breath caught. They found us again. Kane turned to her, calm as always. Then we remind them why they feared humanity. The human fleet moved into formation, shields raised, weapons ready. But Kane didn't give the order to fire. Instead, he opened all communication channels across the galaxy. His voice echoed through every system, every world, every network. "This is Admiral Kane of Earth," he said firmly. "Humanity does not seek war. But if you come for us again, we will show you what mercy's end looks like." The galaxy listened. Every species, every council, every outpost. And for the first time in 100 years, they felt the weight of human resolve. The alien fleet hesitated. They didn't attack. They just watched the glowing army of old human ships holding the line in perfect silence. Then, one by one, the alien ships retreated. The message was clear. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would think twice before waking the storm again. Vera stood beside Kane, her heart filled with awe and something deeper. "You could have ruled them all," she said quietly. He looked at her and smiled faintly. "We don't rule. We remember." And as the fleet drifted in formation, thousands of lights glowing across the dark void, Vera knew that the legend of humanity wasn't over. It was only beginning. The war drums had gone silent, but peace was fragile, like glass resting on the edge of a blade. The galaxy had heard Kane's message. Some believed it. Others planned in the dark, whispering of revenge. But here, among the silent stars aboard the Valkyrian, the truth was beginning to rise like dawn. Vera stood on the viewing deck, watching the endless expanse. The human fleet drifted behind them, majestic, powerful, alive again. She had never seen such unity among any race. It stirred something inside her, something she couldn't name. Was it admiration? Guilt? Hope? Kane approached quietly. His presence was calm, grounding, yet filled with that quiet sadness that never left him. "You haven't slept," he said. She smiled faintly. "Neither have you." He said nothing for a while, just watched the stars. "You've been thinking about your people." She nodded. "I grew up believing humans were the enemy, that your kind destroyed worlds without reason. Now I see. We were the ones destroying the truth." Kane's gaze didn't waver. "Lies are easier than guilt. The council needed someone to fear, so they gave your people a monster." Vera's voice dropped low. "And they used me to deliver their message." Kane turned to her. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath, her eyes full of old pain. "The council didn't sentence me because I spoke against them. That was only half the truth." She paused, her voice trembling slightly. "My husband was one of them, a general. He commanded the attacks on human colonies. But when he learned the council planned to exterminate every survivor, even children, he refused to obey." Kane's eyes hardened. "They killed him." Vera nodded slowly. "They called it an accident. I knew the truth, but I couldn't prove it. So I spoke out. They branded me a traitor and sentenced me to you, as punishment for loving a man who defied them." Kane stood silent, his jaw tight. Then he said softly, "They thought they were sending you to die." "Yes," she whispered. "But instead they sent me to the truth." For a moment neither spoke. The hum of the ship filled the silence between them. Then the intercom crackled. "Admiral, incoming transmission. It's from the fringe colonies. They're calling you." Kane nodded and activated the main screen. A hologram appeared, an alien commander, bruised and desperate. "Admiral Kane," the voice said quickly, "the council has sent assassins to silence every colony that spoke your name. They're calling it the final cleansing. We need help." Kane's expression darkened. "How many worlds? Dozens? Maybe more." The line cut out. Static filled the air. Vera looked at him. "We have to stop them." Kane's voice was low, controlled. "If we strike now, it's war all over again. Then what?" she asked sharply. "Let them kill innocents while you stand here and remember your soul?" Her words hit him like a knife, but she didn't regret saying them. Kane turned away, his fists clenched. "I swore to Elena I would never start another war." Vera stepped closer. "Maybe it's not war. Maybe it's justice." The silence stretched long. Finally, he spoke. "If I do this, there's no going back. Humanity will rise again, and the galaxy will never forgive it." "Then let them hate you," she said fiercely. "They already do. But don't let them erase who you are." Kane stared at her, seeing the fire in her eyes. She wasn't the scared prisoner who had arrived in chains. She was something else now, stronger, fearless. "Prepare the fleet," he said finally. Her breath caught. "You mean," he nodded, "if they want to see the monsters they created, then let them look into the eyes of mercy one last time." She turned to the console, her hands shaking as she sent the orders. Across the void, the human fleet began to move. Engines glowed bright blue. Warships aligned in silence like ghosts answering a forgotten call. Before she left the deck, Kane stopped her. "Vera," she turned. He handed her a metal badge, the insignia of Earth's fleet. "You've earned this. You're no longer a prisoner." Her throat tightened. "What am I then?" He looked at her softly. "My second." For a heartbeat, she couldn't speak. Then she placed the badge over her heart. "I'll make them remember what humanity stood for." Kane nodded once. Not fear, not vengeance, she smiled faintly. Honor. As the fleet accelerated toward the outer systems, Vera stared at the growing light of the stars ahead. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this wasn't just humanity's awakening. It was hers, too. And in that moment, she silently vowed that no matter what came next, she would fight beside him, not as a prisoner, not as a punishment, but as someone who finally understood what it meant to be human. The stars burned brighter that day, as if the galaxy itself knew something unstoppable had awakened. The human fleet, silent for centuries, now roared to life. Thousands of engines hummed in perfect rhythm, their blue light cutting through the darkness like the heartbeat of a reborn world. From the command deck of the Valkyrian, Admiral Kane stood tall, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. Every screen, every radar, every soldier in the fleet waited for his command. But he wasn't rushing into battle. He stood there with a quiet, powerful stillness, the calm of a man who had seen too much war and understood the price of peace. Vera stood beside him, wearing the silver insignia he had given her. The symbol of Earth's fleet gleamed softly on her chest. It felt heavy, not because of its weight, but because of what it meant. She was no longer the alien widow condemned to die beside a human. She was his second in command, his equal in a moment that would shape history. Messages flooded in from colonies across the galaxy. Some begged for help, others sent threats. But one transmission silenced the bridge. It came from the Council itself. A cold, familiar voice filled the air. "Admiral Kane, we offer you one chance. Disband your fleet and surrender your ships. Humanity will be spared extinction once more." Kane's eyes narrowed slightly. "You already spared us once. That's how we learned what mercy from tyrants looks like." Vera could hear the tension in the voice that replied, "If you fight, the galaxy will unite against you." Kane looked out the window, at the endless rows of human ships. "Then let them unite." The signal cut. Vera turned to him. "They'll come with everything they have." He nodded calmly. "Then so will we. But not to destroy, to end this cycle once and for all." The fleet began to move. Human ships surrounded the Council's armada, not in aggression but in defense. Kane had arranged them in a shield formation, a wall to protect the fringe colonies being targeted. The Council's warships opened fire first, beams of white energy streaking through the void. "Shields holding," Vera reported, her voice steady. "Good," Kane said. "Let them exhaust themselves." Hours passed. The enemy threw everything they had, but the human fleet didn't falter. It didn't break. It simply endured. Then when the firing stopped, Kane finally spoke. "Now," the fleet responded instantly. Drones detached, spreading across enemy lines like shining arrows of light. They didn't destroy, they disabled. Their weapons disarmed enemy ships, their signals cut engines, their EMP waves silenced guns. Within minutes, the Council's mighty armada hung motionless, powerless. Kane opened a universal channel. His voice carried across the stars. "This is what humanity has learned. Power means nothing if it cannot build peace. You called us monsters, but monsters burn everything. We protect what remains." The galaxy listened. Every world tuned in. His words weren't just for his enemies, they were for everyone who had ever feared humanity's return. Vera stepped forward beside him and spoke, her voice clear and strong. "I was one of them. I believed the lies. But I saw the truth with my own eyes. Humanity doesn't seek revenge. They seek hope." The transmission spread faster than light. Across the galaxy, people, human and alien alike, heard her words. And something changed. Fear turned to silence. Silence turned to thought. Thought turned to doubt. The war never came. The Council's fleets withdrew. Worlds that had once outlawed the name human began to whisper it again. Not as a curse, but as a story. Days later, in the calm that followed, Vera stood on the observation deck. The stars shimmered in reflection on her face. Kane walked beside her, his expression softer now, almost peaceful. "The galaxy will remember this day," she said quietly. He nodded. "Not because of me, because of you," she frowned. "Me? You were the proof they needed," he said. "A bridge between fear and understanding. They gave you to me as punishment, and you became something far greater." Her voice was barely a whisper. "What did I become?" Kane smiled faintly. "Human." The word lingered in the air, simple but eternal. He turned away, gazing into the void. "Elena believed in peace. You made it real. That's more than any weapon ever could." For a long while, neither spoke. The hum of the ship surrounded them like a soft lullaby. Vera slipped the silver ring from her finger and looked at it. "It belonged to her," she said softly. "But maybe now it belongs to both of us." Kane looked at her. Not as an admiral, not as a soldier, but as a man finally finding light after a long, dark road. "You've already given me back everything I lost," he said quietly. "You're the reason I still believe." Outside, the stars reflected in her eyes, and the massive fleet floated silently behind them, guardians of peace in a galaxy learning to breathe again. Centuries later, stories would be told of the widow of Luthen Prime and the last human admiral, how punishment became destiny, how an alien widow became the treasure of a dying race, and how together they taught the galaxy the meaning of mercy. And somewhere beyond time, among the quiet stars, the fleet of Earth still waited, not for war, but for the next soul brave enough to believe.